Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. We have another year in gaming video. In the last 4 episodes, we covered 1985, 1986, 1987, and 1988, and now we're closing out the decade with the final year of the 1980s. The year was 1989, and a lot of things happened. An earthquake struck the San Francisco Bay Area, killing 63 people. The fall of the Berlin Wall began the downfall of communism in Eastern Europe and paved the way for German reunification. At the box office, one of the biggest movies of the year was Batman, the live-action blockbuster starring Michael Keaton. Other major hits included Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Look Who's Talking, Lethal Weapon 2, The Little Mermaid, and Back to the Future Part 2. On television, several iconic shows made their debut, including The Simpsons, Seinfeld, Tales from the Crypt, Family Matters, Baywatch, The Arsenio Hall Show, and American Gladiators. On the music charts in 1989, Madonna released her controversial hit, Just Like a Prayer, which sparked major debate but became one of the biggest songs of the year. Meanwhile, Milli Vanilli dominated the charts with Girl You Know It's True, before their infamous lip-sync scandal would later rock the industry. Other major hits in 1989 included She Drives Me Crazy, by Fine Young Cannibals, Bat Dance, by Prince, Eternal Flame, by The Bangles, The Look, by Roxette. 1989 was stacked with iconic pop hits that still get radio play today. In the world of sports, 1989 delivered some dominant performances. The Detroit Pistons swept the Los Angeles Lakers in the 1989 NBA Finals, capturing their first NBA championship and officially ending the Lakers' Showtime era. In Major League Baseball, despite the devastating earthquake that delayed the series, the Oakland Athletics swept the San Francisco Giants in 4 games during the 1989 World Series, a series forever remembered for the events surrounding it. Meanwhile, in football, legendary quarterback Joe Montana led the San Francisco 49ers to their 3rd Super Bowl title, defeating the Cincinnati Bengals in Super Bowl 23 with a dramatic game-winning drive. But 1989 was the final year of the 1980s, and it went out with a bang. Nintendo continued its dominance in the video game market and released one of the most groundbreaking handheld systems of all time, changing portable gaming forever. Meanwhile, Mario Mania was sweeping the country. From video games to television, Mario had become a full-blown cultural phenomenon. But across the battlefield, Sega was preparing to launch its next-generation console, a move that would ignite one of the biggest rivalries in gaming history. And on top of all that, 1989 delivered some absolute blockbuster titles that would help define the future of the industry. So let's rewind the clock. This is the year in gaming, 1989. 1. NES continues its dominance. For the second straight year, the Nintendo Entertainment System continued to be the top-selling console on the market. By 1989, the NES had sold over 60 million units worldwide, making it one of the most successful consoles of all time. But it wasn't just about hardware sales. Nintendo wasn't just winning the console war, they were becoming a mainstream entertainment powerhouse. Their characters were everywhere, not just in video games, but on coloring books, T-shirts, lunchboxes, toys, cartoons. Nintendo had transformed from a video game company into a global brand. By 1989, they weren't just selling consoles, they were selling a culture. And at the center of it all was Mario. 2. Nintendo launches the Game Boy. While Nintendo dominated the home console market, they were also preparing to take over something else, handheld gaming. Nintendo had already found success with their Game and Watch devices earlier in the decade. But in 1989, they introduced something revolutionary. The Game Boy. This gray, not purple, handheld system allowed players to take their games anywhere. It wasn't flashy, it didn't have color, and compared to some competitors, it wasn't the most powerful device on the market. But what it did have were great games. Most importantly, it launched with Tetris, a game so addictive that it appealed to kids and adults alike. That decision helped turn the Game Boy into an instant cultural phenomenon. By the end of 1989, the Game Boy had become one of the must-have gaming devices of the year, and it would go on to become one of the best-selling handhelds of all time. Nintendo didn't just win the home console war in 1989. They won the road, too. 3. Mario Mania and the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. In 1989, while characters like Batman and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles were huge, one character stood above them all in the gaming world. Mario. Since his debut in Donkey Kong 8 years earlier, Mario had grown into one of the most recognizable characters on the planet. By 1989, he wasn't just a video game character, he was a cultural icon. You could find Mario on lunchboxes, T-shirts, toys, posters. He was everywhere. But that same year, Nintendo teamed up with Dick Entertainment to take Mario even further into the mainstream with the launch of the Super Mario Bros. Super Show. The show starred professional wrestling manager Lou Albano as Mario. Each episode featured a live-action segment starring Mario and Luigi, followed by a 15-minute animated adventure. The show included Luigi, Princess Toadstool, Peach, and Toad. And on Fridays, episodes of The Legend of Zelda aired as part of the lineup. The Super Show was truly one of a kind. It helped introduce Mario to an even wider audience and cemented him as more than just a gaming mascot. He became a household name. 1989 wasn't just Mario's year, it was Mario Mania. 4. Sega launches the Genesis. While Nintendo was dominating both home consoles and handhelds in 1989, a challenger stepped into the ring. Sega officially launched the Sega Genesis in North America in 1989. This wasn't just another console, it was 16-bit. Compared to the 8-bit NES, the Genesis offered faster processing, more detailed graphics, better arcade-style experiences, edgier marketing. At first, the system didn't immediately dethrone Nintendo. The NES was still king, but the Genesis marked the true beginning of the 16-bit era, and the start of one of the greatest rivalries in gaming history. Nintendo versus Sega, the console wars were officially underway, and the 1990s would never be the same. 5. The Power Glove, ahead of its time. Before the Wii, before motion controls became mainstream, there was the Power Glove. In 1989, toy company Mattel released the Power Glove for the Nintendo Entertainment System. And it looked futuristic. The Power Glove allowed players to control games using hand movements and finger motions. Instead of holding a traditional controller, you wore it. You could tilt your hand, move your wrist, and even program gestures to replace button inputs. In theory, it was revolutionary. Imagine playing Super Mario Bros. And triggering actions with hand movements. It felt like something straight out of a sci-fi movie. But unfortunately, the technology just wasn't ready. The controls were inaccurate, there were very few supported games, and most players found it difficult to use. By 1990, what once seemed like the future of gaming was quickly discounted and fading from store shelves. Still, the Power Glove was ahead of its time. It paved the way for future motion-based gaming systems like the Wii decades later. The Power Glove may not have been a long-term success, but it proved one thing: innovation in gaming never stops. 6. Captain N and the Game Master hits TV. Another big Nintendo moment in 1989 wasn't just in arcades or on consoles, it was on Saturday mornings. Based on the popular Nintendo Power comic, Nintendo teamed up once again with Dick Entertainment to create the animated series, Captain N, the Game Master. The show followed Kevin Keene, a teenager who is transported into the digital world of Videoland. There, he teams up with Princess Lana and a group of iconic video game heroes. The N team included Simon Belmont from Castlevania, Pit from Kid Icarus, Mega Man from Mega Man, and they battled classic Nintendo villains like Mother Brain from Metroid, the Eggplant Wizard from Kid Icarus, King Hippo from Mike Tyson's Punch-Out! The show premiered on NBC on September 9, 1989, and ran for 3 seasons. It was one of the first major crossovers in gaming history, bringing multiple Nintendo franchises together in one animated universe. For many kids, this was their first time seeing their favorite video game characters interacting outside of their own games. Captain N may not have been perfect, but it was ambitious, creative, and completely 1989. And honestly, a modern reboot could be incredible. 7. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles hit the video game world. In 1989, alongside Batman and Mario, one franchise was absolutely unstoppable: the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Turtle power was everywhere, from cartoons to action figures to lunchboxes. And in 1989, they officially invaded the gaming world. The first NES title, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System. In the game, players could control all 4 turtles: Leonardo, Raphael, Donatello, Michelangelo. Your mission? Rescue April O'Neil and stop Shredder and the Foot Clan. What made the game stand out was its semi-open world structure. Players could explore New York City, enter buildings, travel through the sewers, and switch between turtles strategically. It wasn't easy, in fact, it was notoriously difficult, but it became one of the best-selling and most talked-about games of the year. And that wasn't all. Also in 1989, the arcade smash hit Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was released. This 4-player beat-em-up let friends team up side by side to fight through waves of enemies together. It was loud, it was chaotic, it was awesome. By the end of 1989, Turtle Power wasn't just a slogan. It was a full-blown phenomenon. 8. Ninja Gaiden Strikes the NES. One of the most intense action games of the arcade era made a powerful leap to home consoles in 1989, Ninja Gaiden. Released on the Nintendo Entertainment System, this wasn't just another side-scrolling action game, it was cinematic. The story follows Ryu Hayabusa, a skilled ninja who travels to America to avenge his father's murder. Set in a dark, retro-modern world, the game combined fast-paced hack-and-slash combat with something rarely seen at the time, cinematic cutscenes. Yes, Ninja Gaiden helped pioneer story-driven presentation on the NES, using dramatic visuals and dialogue between stages to push the narrative forward. That was groundbreaking in 1989. The gameplay was fast, challenging, and precise. Wall climbing, ninja arts, brutal enemies, it demanded skill and patience. Critically, the game was a huge success. It received strong reviews and became one of the most respected action titles on the NES. For a third-party release, that was a big deal in Nintendo's ecosystem. By the end of 1989, Ninja Gaiden proved something important. The NES wasn't slowing down. It was still delivering some of the most intense action experiences of the decade. 9. TURBOGRAFX-16 enters the fight. While Nintendo and Sega were battling it out, a third competitor entered the arena in 1989. That company was NEC. In 1989, NEC released the TURBOGRAFX-16 in North America. Technically, it was impressive for its time. The system featured an 8-bit CPU, dual 16-bit graphics processors, support for hundreds of on-screen colors, and instead of traditional cartridges, it used HuCards, a thin card-based format, with CD support arriving later through an add-on, something very forward-thinking for the era. The TURBOGRAFX-16 had strong arcade-style titles and some cult classics. However, it struggled in key areas: a higher price point, limited third-party support, weak marketing in the US, fewer must-have exclusives compared to Nintendo. By the early 1990s, the system had faded from the mainstream spotlight in North America. The console wars ultimately became a two-company battle, Nintendo versus Sega. But for a brief moment in 1989, it looked like gaming might have had three major contenders. The TURBOGRAFX-16 may not have won the war, but it remains one of the most fascinating what-if stories in gaming history. 10. Final Fight dominates the arcades. While Nintendo and Sega were battling in the home console market, arcades in 1989 were still booming. Even with arcade prices climbing to 50 cents per play, gamers kept coming back, because the graphics, sound, and action were on another level. And one of the biggest arcade hits of the year was Final Fight. Released by Capcom, Final Fight became one of the defining beat-em-ups of its era. In the game, players could choose from three heroes: Mike Hager, a former professional wrestler turned mayor; Cody, a street brawler; Guy, a fast and agile martial artist. The trio sets out to rescue Jessica, Hager's daughter and Cody's girlfriend, after she's kidnapped by the Mad Gear Gang. Final Fight stood out because of large, detailed character sprites, smooth animations, co-op gameplay, hard-hitting combat. It helped define the side-scrolling beat-em-up genre and set the stage for many arcade classics that followed. 2 years later, the game made its way to the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, bringing the arcade experience into living rooms, though many still argue the arcade version was the definitive way to play. By the end of 1989, Final Fight proved that arcades weren't going anywhere just yet. The streets were loud, the quarters were flowing. 11. The Mother series begins, Earthbound's origins. While North America was focused on Mario and the console wars, something special was happening in Japan. On the family computer, better known as the Famicom, Nintendo released Mother. Known later to Western audiences as Earthbound Beginnings, the game followed a young American boy named Ninten. Using psychic abilities connected to his great-grandfather's research, Nintendo sets out to stop mysterious paranormal events spreading across the country. What made Mother stand out in 1989? A modern-day setting instead of medieval fantasy. Emotional storytelling, humor mixed with dark themes, a unique soundtrack and atmosphere. It became a cult classic in Japan. However, US gamers never received the original Mother during the NES era. For years, fans had to import the Japanese version or wait and hope for a release. The sequel, Earthbound, finally arrived in North America on the Super Nintendo in 1995, introducing Western players to the quirky RPG world. And decades later, in 2009, the original Mother was finally officially released in the US, allowing a whole new generation to experience where the series began. The Mother series may not have been a global hit in 1989, but it would go on to become one of Nintendo's most beloved cult franchises. 12. The Wizard hits theaters. While Nintendo was dominating television with Mario and Captain N, they also made a big splash on the big screen in 1989. That film was the cult classic, The Wizard, starring Fred Savage. The movie followed a young boy named Jimmy, a troubled but incredibly gifted gamer with amazing skills on the Nintendo Entertainment System. Jimmy's brother Corey helps him escape from a psychiatric facility, and together, along with a new friend, they travel across the country to compete in a massive video game tournament called Video Armageddon, held at Universal Studios. Along the way, the film showcased several popular Nintendo titles, including Ninja Gaiden, The Legend of Zelda, Super Mario Bros. 2, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The movie even featured the futuristic Power Glove, making it look like the coolest thing ever. But the biggest moment? The first major public reveal of Super Mario Bros. 3. For many fans in North America, this was the very first time they saw Mario 3 in action. Before YouTube, before online trailers, if you wanted to see what the next big Mario game looked like, you had to go to the movie theater. The Wizard may have been a giant Nintendo commercial, but for gamers in 1989, it was magical. It became a cult classic and remains one of the most nostalgic gaming movies ever made. The games of 1989, a stacked year. If there's one word to describe 1989, stacked. It was a blockbuster year across consoles, handhelds, and arcades. On the NES, the Nintendo Entertainment System delivered some absolute classics. Mega Man 2, which exploded in popularity in 1989, Tecmo Bowl. Dragon Warrior, known in Japan as Dragon Quest, Dragon Warrior's US debut helped introduce many American players to Japanese-style RPGs. On the Sega Genesis, the newly launched Sega Genesis had early heavy hitters like Golden Axe. Altered Beast, Rise from Your Grave, became one of the most iconic lines of the early 16-bit era. On the Game Boy, the revolutionary Game Boy launched with must-play titles like Tetris. Super Mario Land, portable gaming officially became mainstream. In the arcades were still thriving in 1989 with hits like Strider, Super Off-Road, Hard Drivin', Double Dragon 2, The Revenge, and 1989 also introduced a brand new IP that would become legendary, Prince of Persia. Its realistic animation and cinematic style were revolutionary for the time. The rise of gaming magazines. Before YouTube, before websites, before social media, gamers relied on magazines. While Nintendo Power was the official source for Nintendo fans, 1989 saw the launch of major third-party publications like GamePro, Electronic Gaming Monthly. These magazines covered everything: Nintendo, Sega, arcades, imports, and became essential reading for gamers everywhere. They shaped opinions, they broke news, they built hype. 1989 wasn't just another year in gaming. It was the end of the 80s, and it ended with a bang. The NES was still dominating. The Genesis was entering the fight. The Game Boy changed portable gaming forever. Arcades were booming, and the console wars were just beginning. 1989 wasn't just stacked, it was legendary. 1989 closed out the 1980s with one of the most important years in gaming history. A year that set the stage for everything the next decade would bring. Nintendo finished the decade at the top, dominating consoles, handhelds, and pop culture. But a new challenger was rising, Sega, ready to shake up the industry and ignite the console wars of the 1990s. From home consoles to arcades, from Game Boys to cult classics, 1989 wasn't just the end of a decade, it was a launchpad for the next era of gaming innovation. If you enjoyed this trip through 1989, make sure to hit that like button, drop a comment down below with your favorite 1989 game, and subscribe for more year in gaming retrospectives. Thanks for watching, and as always, we'll see you next time.